3. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our new session on Education USA Facebook Live. And today we have an interesting session with College Board about the digital SAT. But before we start with our session, I would like to give a brief introduction about Education USA and our services. Education USA is a US Department of State network of over 430 international students. Student advising centers in more than 175 countries and territories. Education USA Qatar is based at the US Embassy in Doha. We provide information to all students looking to study in the United States. In addition, we work with many stakeholders, including high school counselors, the Ministry of Education, Higher Education, university representatives, and alums. We visit universities and high schools, providing in-person and virtual sessions on studying in the United States. They can be a one-on-one sessions, or they can be group advising sessions. If you want to contact us or you want to email us, you can email us on doha@educationusa.org to schedule an appointment to speak to one of us. Please also, I'm asking you, this is a cliche, but I'm asking you to follow our pages, Education USA Qatar, on social media to get updated information on different programs and scholarships, or watch our various sessions. Now I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, or Matthew Chovanec from College Board. He will introduce himself and he can now start the session. Matthew, over to you.
Thank you so much, Hanadi. Yes, so I am Matthew Chovanec, and I am I work for College Board. So we are the organization that actually makes the SAT test. So we are very excited because we just launched the new digital version of the SAT test. And today I'm going to show you how it all works, what it looks like, and most importantly, probably the reason why you're here, how you can practice for it if you want to sign up for one of the tests coming up in the upcoming months. So let's get started. My name is Matthew Chovanec, like I said, and I work on the international team at College Board, and I'm responsible for the Middle East and for Eurasia, parts of Eurasia at least. And I often work with Education USA. I'm always so happy to be in cooperation with them. Like Hanadi said, it's always excellent to get your advice from them, to schedule a meeting and to join events like this. So the digital SAT, let's talk about it. So the digital SAT is part of the SAT, a test that's been around for quite some time, and a test that is part of several tests, a suite of tests, as we say. As the name implies, the suite is not a single test, but it is one that follows through basically your entire high school career. And it helps you kind of see where you are right when you're beginning your high school with the PSAT 8 and 9. It's like a foundation test that kind of helps you know where your skills are at. We have the PSAT NMSQT and the PSAT 10, which is a sort of check-in. It lets you see what your progress is, and it pinpoints where you are for your readiness to actually take the final SAT, which is the one that you take to connect to college. What is the SAT measure? SAT is a test that we have designed that with exactly the types of skills to reflect your readiness for college. So one of the things that we do is we look at students who took the SAT test and then who go to college, and we see how many of them do well in their first year, what their grades are like in their first year, how long they stay in college in general. And we're able to show a really nice relationship between this test and between college, because this isn't just the actual facts that you need to know when you go to school, when you go to college. What are the math skills? What are the reading and writing skills? But the ones that are very, very similar to the types of reading and the types of math that you're going to be doing when you actually get to college. So this test measures your readiness for exactly the types of things that you're going to see once you step into that college classroom. If you've known anything about the SAT, it's kind of famous for being a 1600 score. That's the top score that you could get. And that score is made up of 2 parts: evidence-based reading and writing on one hand, and math on the other. Math is mostly algebra and geometry. There's no calculus on the test. We'll look really specifically today at some of what the actual math skills that we could potentially ask you on the SAT are. And then evidence-based reading and writing, what that means is, the long and short of it is any type of text that you could see in the English language that you would see in a college classroom. So it could be something from literature, it could be something from social science, but it could even be something from sciences as well. You will see some of the questions that we'll look at today that'll basically be graphs from like a science experiment that you would be reading in your class for geology, or for maybe even like a chemistry class. It all kind of just depends on the text that you come across in the name of the test. So this is not just asking you about the grammar of the English language. It's not just asking you difficult questions about vocabulary. These are actual reading passages that we take from college courses that we bring in and ask you questions about. So that's what we mean when we say evidence-based reading and writing. We're asking you to read a text, and we're asking you to really understand and engage with it. Okay, and you can get from a score of 200 to 800 on both of these sections, and that adds up to your full score. Okay, now, like I said, the test has now gone digital. It was a paper test up until March of this year, and it used to be about a 3-hour test with both a math and an English section. But because it's now digital, it's become almost 50% shorter. So now it's, as you can see, a little bit over 2 hours. And the reason why we're able to do this is because the test is adaptive, which means you're going to answer questions in the first module, or the first part of the reading and writing section, and the first part of the math section. And then based on how you do in that first part, we'll then give you questions in the second part, or the second module, we call it, that are a little bit more specifically focused to your skill level, or where we think you're the best suited to answer these questions. And because we're being able to serve you more specific questions in the second module, it just takes us much less time to understand what your actual level of reading and writing is on one hand, and what your level of math is on the other. Okay, so let's actually look at what this is. So when it was a paper test, it was 96 total questions. It was 54. Now it's going to only be 54 on the computer. It was 100 total minutes for the reading and writing section. That is quite a long sprint. That is a lot of time you're spending answering questions on looking at reading passages. Now it is just over an hour. It's 64 minutes. And you can see too, we added a lot more time per question. So now you have almost 1.19 minutes per question, which makes things a lot less stressful. And then lastly, we used to ask you several questions for each reading passage. So you could have a reading passage that would be 4 or 5 paragraphs long, and then you have 5 questions, and you have to go back, flip back and forth to the question in order to get the answers. Now you have one text, you have one question. So it's a little bit more just simple and easy to just see the question, see the answers all at the same time. And we'll show you exactly what that looks like here in just a second. The math section as well, it's again, less questions, more time to answer it, and more time per question. There are going to be some multiple choice questions, but there are also going to be ones where you actually have to type in the answer. And I'll show you how you do that in just a couple minutes. But it does mean that you have to be really careful with how you enter your math answers so that you don't get them judged wrong. And I'll show you what we mean by that in a second. And more of a reason for you to practice and be ready for this test before the actual test day, so that you know exactly what are the ways that you type in these student-produced response answers to get them right. Okay. Now, this is a digital test, which means you have to take it on a computer. Whose computer? Your own computer. You bring in a laptop, a tablet, or a managed Chromebook to a test center. And then you're going to sit in desks, and you're going to have a proctor, somebody who's going to watch you take the test, just like you did in the old days, but now you'll be sitting at a desk with your own device. Okay. This device should be able to hold a charge for 3 hours. And this is because the test is only 2 hours, but you want to have a little bit more time in case something else was wrong or there's a pause, so that we'll make sure that we're safe. And so we make sure that you're not worrying about your computer on the day of the test. You can instead just worry on doing the best you can on the questions. Okay. And then the last thing that this computer must have is a connection to Wi-Fi. What you do is you log on to the Wi-Fi at the test center. So if it's a school, you'll get the code basically to sign on to their Wi-Fi, and you'll also get the code to sign up specifically for that test in the room that you're in. It'll download the test and encrypted to your computer. You'll then take the test. It'll all be stored on your computer, and then you will upload it at the end. And actually, those are the only 2 points that you really need to be connected to a Wi-Fi. In the beginning to download the test, in the end to upload it. So sometimes people will ask questions about, is this going to be safe? What if Wi-Fi cuts in the middle of it? What if there's an electricity power outage? That's something that can happen, but we actually will store the test on your device safely, and you'll have several days, in fact, to connect back to Wi-Fi before you would actually lose that test. So we have a lot of things in place, and I can go into the details if you had any questions later about how actually this works. But basically, your test should be safe, and you should be good to take it as long as you do have a device that is able to connect to Wi-Fi and is one of our approved devices. Okay. If you have any questions, please just you can put them in the chat, and I will periodically check in and make sure that I'm answering your questions. We oftentimes have questions about these kind of device logistic things for test centers, and we have in fact worked this all out because we have now done this test in the real world, but also piloted it with over 50,000 students in 960 test centers. So we've had a lot of time to kind of work out the bugs here, to figure out what works, what doesn't work. And we really, really do feel confident with the way that we're administering the test. So if you have any worries about taking this test, what kind of device you are, where it is you're going to take them, let me know, because we really have figured out a lot of this stuff, okay? And like I said, we first piloted this test just over a month ago on March 11th, and we had 43,000 students in 166 different countries take the new digital SAT. And most of them say that they really enjoy the new version of the test. Many of these students took the paper and pencil version, and then they took the digital version. And then they said that they felt it was very easy to use. They much prefer it over the paper and pencil version. So you guys, if you are going to be signing up and taking this test in the future, well, then you are very lucky, because this is a much less stressful test experience than it used to be. And we have a majority of students saying that. And the reason why it's less stressful has a lot to do with the fact that you've got more time to answer each question. You don't have to worry about filling in a Scantron, turning it in, those types of things. It's much less stressful for the test centers where you're taking the test as well. So that's kind of a better experience for everybody. But you don't have to believe me. You can listen to students that we've had actually take this pilot. So let's watch this video now. So just get a little bit of a sense of their experience and hear their advice about what they feel with the new digital SAT.
The digital SAT was a great experience. Everything from downloading the app to setting up our devices to actually give the SAT went really smoothly. I thought that I was a lot less stressed, mainly because the test was shorter.
My experience with the digital SAT was that it was super easy to take, and it was very convenient, and I was definitely less stressed out. I would definitely recommend it because it took away a lot of the pressure.
It was easy to set up, easy to log in. The instructions were really clear.
I was actually very impressed by this test. I was very impressed how clean the program was.
The first thing I noticed was the software itself was seamless. I have not taken a better digital test. That's because there was no buffering between the questions.
Digitally is more convenient because you can easily switch between the questions, and all the tools are provided.
The tools at my disposal were very readily accessible and easy to use.
The reading chunks were a lot smaller, which made it easier for me to concentrate on what they were actually asking for and what the content actually was. So that was a lot more enjoyable.
It helped that today's SAT was much shorter and the questions were a lot more concise and straightforward. I liked it a lot better.
For me, taking the digital SAT was so much better. I can't even explain it. I was so happy to take the test.
One reason why I wanted y'all to see this video was because it showed a good example. And
Chunks were a lot smaller.
Try to find it here in the video to show it again. I want you guys to see what the actual classroom looks like when you're taking the test. Here it is. So this is what it looks like. And someone had asked me, you know, if we're taking this on our own laptop or tablet, why do we even need to come into a testing center? Well, the reason is because we still want you to be able to be watched while you are taking the test. You know, if you were at home, maybe you'd be borrowing your brother or sister's iPhone off on the side to look at answers. So we still need to make sure that you are, that everyone is focusing on the test, that they're not using any other resources, that we can be there in case anything goes wrong. So it is still really important that you come to a test center, but you will be taking it on your own device. So I hope that makes sense. You will, the way that it's going to work is you will, on your own laptop, download an app called Bluebook. And this is the official app for taking tests with College Board. And you can not only take the test on Bluebook, but you can practice for it, which is what we're here to talk about today. I'm going through some of these preliminary things to give you some background about the digital SAT, but what we're really getting in today is an exploration of Bluebook, because like they said in the video, it has a lot of tools that you can use while taking the test. And being comfortable with the app in general is something that you should really be prepared for before you come to the test center. You should be able to understand and read the directions. You should understand how to work through the test, and you should be taking some practice tests to get a really good sense of the timing as well. Okay, so I'm going to save everybody the suspense, and I'm going to share with you the #1 official tip or trick that we have from College Board for you to prepare for the digital SAT. And that is download Bluebook, understand how all the tools work, and then take practice tests so that you can understand exactly how long it takes you to go through a test. You can feel comfortable taking the test, and you'll be much more prepared when it comes to the day of the test. Rather than some sort of trick about which way to answer the questions, or is the best way to eliminate answers and things like that, the best advice that I can give to you is to just feel comfortable and feel prepared with the pace of this test. I guarantee you will be much more comfortable and ready, and you'll do better on the test when it comes time to actually take it. And then in addition to that, we're going to get some really, really good focused practice and focused feedback for you by when we take these tests. You can see how you did. And then you can go to our official partner, Khan Academy, and they've got a whole new part on their website specifically for the skills needed for the digital SAT. And I'll show you that in just a couple minutes too. Okay. And we just had one more question that I saw here that I wanted to answer before we move on. And that is whether or not the digital test is going to be more difficult. So in some ways, the digital test is less stressful because you have more time per question. You get to take it on this app rather than it being on a paper and pencil. But it doesn't mean that the test is any easier. In fact, the test is exactly as difficult as it was before. And we know this for a fact because we actually had many students take both tests. And they basically did what we call a concordance study, which means we wanted to make sure that students would basically get the same grade on both versions of the test. And we worked very hard to make sure that they were the same, and they are the same. So if you took a test on paper and pencil last year, and you got a score, it should be very similar unless you've done a lot of great practicing on this version of the test. And in fact, you can do a super score. You can submit the test scores from both the paper and pencil version and the digital version if you'd like, because they are, for all intents and purposes, the same test. Okay, I hope that answers your question. Let's move on now and just talk a little bit about registration before we go into all of the great practice that we have available for you. So like I said, we have this test now all over the world. I see, unfortunately, Qatar is a little bit small to be on this map, but I know that it's there. Yeah, I guess I can see that there's Qatar there. But it's available all over the Middle East, all over the world, 186 different countries. You can go to mysat.com to register, and you'll be able to search for a center. So you'll be able to find one closest to you, whether you live in Doha or whether you live outside of Doha or if you live in another country. Okay. And we've added more dates to this as well. So now you should have 7 opportunities per year to take the SAT test. The ones that are upcoming, most recently is going to be this May on May 6th. And you have until the end of this, basically the end of this month, April 21st to sign up. If you miss that, that's totally fine. The next test, and then one of our new test dates internationally is going to be June 3rd. Okay. So you got lots of times to take this. And a lot of times students will ask me, when is the best time for me to take this test? And the answer is when you are ready. Oftentimes students will take it in the fall of their senior year, so they have a test result that they can share with universities. But oftentimes they'll take it in the spring of their junior year to give themselves a first chance. And then they can take it then, and then they have the summer to practice if they want to, and then they can retake the test again. That's what I did when I was a student. But this was a long time ago, so maybe you shouldn't take my advice because it was almost 20 years ago. No, it was more than 20 years ago. But those are some of the dates that we have for the test upcoming, and you can always look online and see when they are, and give yourself a good window, some good time to practice, get comfortable with this test before you actually take it. Which, speaking of, now let's actually take a look. I'm going to exit out of this PowerPoint presentation so we can actually take a look at Bluebook. So like I said, I downloaded this app, Bluebook, which is everything that you need to practice and take the SAT. It's the same app for both practice and the actual test itself. So you download it. I downloaded it from the App Store on my MacBook. As you can see here, it's just an app on my computer. I sign in. Now I have a student account because I actually took the digital SAT so that I could learn how it works and get a score. And so you can use your student account, your College Board student account. If you don't have one, you can just sign up one for free, but that's basically your account for all things College Board. If you end up taking AP courses, if you use Big Future, our program for college search, any of those things, they're all tied together with your College Board ID. You just need an email address in order to use it. So here we go. I'm inside the app, and it has 2 different, very important features that we're going to take a look at today. The first is test preview, and the second is full-length practice. Test preview is a great way to get into the testing application, to explore it, to understand all of the bells and whistles that it has, but it's not a timed test. So there's no stress about this. This is literally just what we call a sandbox, a place where you can kind of play, figure out how everything works at your pace. And when you are ready and you understand how everything works, and which we're going to learn a lot about today, right now, you can then go over and take one of 4 full-length practice tests that have exactly as many questions as a real test, take as long as a real test, so it'll take you a little bit over 2 hours to take both of these tests. And then most importantly, once you've taken the test, it'll give you a score and it'll give you feedback on your answers. So after we've taken a look at the Bluebook, we'll go to mysat.com where we can review the practice tests that we've taken, okay? But first, let's go into test preview and take a look at exactly what Bluebook looks like. So we're going to explore it, we're going to take our time, and we're going to test any assistive technology. So we're going to look at SAT tests here because some students in the United States will be taking AP tests using this in a little bit. And that's going to drop for the test for us because, like I said, it's custom for each student. You get different answers based on from the people that are in the very same testing room as you. So each test is completely unique. And this makes it so that you've got a custom test, which is really, really cool. So it was loading it up for us. So here we are in the reading section. Here are just the instructions for taking the reading session. Guess what? You want a little tip? Know what this says before you even come into the test, so that when this pops up, you don't have to waste any time reading it. You should know exactly what the instructions say, because the instructions are going to be the exact same on test day. Okay. And now here we are. We are in the actual SAT test. And you can see what a reading and writing passage look like. It's actually quite short if you had the same idea as me. It's pretty short here, but it's still a challenging question. What it's wanting us to do is say, what would be the most logical word to go in this spot here? Okay. And we have 4 answer choices because it's multiple choice. So let me show you one of the first tools that we have. And that is, I know that it's not the pieces of spoken word, but don't lose there. So I'm looking at this, I'm trying to fill in this question, and I know that it's not 2 of these answers. I know that it's not jarring, and I know that it's not scholarly. I'm trying to choose between melodic and personal. Well, what I can do is click on this tool, and it will allow me to cross out the answers that I'm sure are wrong. Great. But I'm not ready to answer this question yet, so I'm going to mark it for review, which means I can answer any of the questions on the digital SAT test in any order that I want, which is great. So let's move on. Great, I feel comfortable at this. This question, let's just pretend like I'm a superpowered human and I can just really read this quickly. Okay, that's the answer. Okay, I'm not sure of this one. I'm going to do this. I think it's this answer, but I want to mark for review and come back later and check. Okay, here's a really great example of the diversity of text that we can have. There's a lot of different texts that you can see here, not just one selection. You can actually have 2 different texts. So these are actually 2 different people writing, and we're actually asking you a question about how these 2 writings contrast or how they're different. Here we have some poetry. Here we have, like I said, a graph. So we're asking you to ask, sorry, not a graph, a table. We want you to actually look at this table. It actually has numbers in it. We need you to interpret this and to tell us what's going on and give us which choice effectively uses the table to complete the example. So again, you can have many questions in the reading and writing section which have a table or a graph, a reading section along with it, and then we're asking you to put those 2 together and to try to analyze it, okay? So that's another type of text that we can have. Here again, we have what looks like botany. So this is a text about dandelions, about a type of flower. So, but then it's asking us a question about English. So we can't ask you questions about vocabulary. We can't ask you questions about punctuation. And this is, in fact, even though the text is a scientific text, the question we're asking you is about punctuation. Here, we don't have like a text at all. It's actually a bulleted list. But again, we're asking you to make analysis of it. We want you to understand relevant information, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there we go. Now I've run through the entire English section of this, of the reading and writing section. But wait a minute, I still have 2 questions that I haven't answered. So you come at the end of every module, at the end of every part of the SAT test, you'll come to this review screen. And this will show you which of the questions you wanted to take a look at again by having flagged with a bookmark. It'll let you see which questions you haven't answered yet, okay? So I feel confident about questions 2, 5, 6, 7, and 8. I feel great about those. I don't need to go back and check those, but I do need to go back to these questions and answer them. Okay, so now I'm here in the reading and writing text, and I have one more tool that I can use, and that is going to be the annotation tool, which I can then highlight a word like zooplankton, and I can annotate it and write, is this that small creature that lives in the ocean? And I save it. Great. So this is a really nice tool that you have for working with texts, that you can kind of navigate it. And then when you come back and you look, there's the note that you gave yourself, okay? So now I can finish it, and then I can go back to the review. Here's the other question I hadn't finished. Now that I've had a minute to think about it, I'm pretty sure the answer is melodic. So now I will go back to the review page and I'm done. Okay. So that's the module there. It's over with. And now I've got a good feeling, a good sense of how the reading and writing section work. Someone had asked here and about whether about practice besides Bluebook. We are going to, in fact,
he also. Now don't go to Omar. They are really mad with some issues. Go up. Don't put yourself in trouble.
Can you please mute yourselves? Those who are Jasmine. Okay, you can go ahead. Sorry,
thanks.
Matthew.
No problem. Sorry. So there had been a question about giving us some other practice. Yes, I am going to show you more specifically about where you can actually practice once you've given your score. So just give me a minute here. I'm kind of taking you through what Bluebook actually looks like, because again, understanding how Bluebook looks and feels is a really, really important part of being successful on this test. One of the reasons why is at the beginning of the math section, you're going to have this long description of how to answer your free response sections. This is a lot of text here. There's a lot of rules here. You definitely want to read this and understand this long before you come to the test. Okay. So here we are in the math section, and I want to show you that we still have the same multiple choice selection that you can kind of cross out wrong answers like we had before. Great. You can also mark the questions for review like we had before, but there are two other resources that I wanted to point you out to, and one is the calculator. On the day of the test, you can bring your own approved calculator if you'd like. You will also be given paper and pencil if you need to work on math problems. Excellent, great. But we have, if you'd like, this built-in calculator that we've designed that can expand, it can collapse, and it can go away whenever you need it, and it'll actually shift the screen. Fantastic. But here is our calculator, and it has a lot of really, really great tools. You can use pi, you can use square roots, you can use all types of exponential functions. To give you one example of something that I did not understand that was available to me when I took the digital SAT as a practice. So I came upon a question that was asking me for the intersection point of two linear equations. And it has been a little while since I've done college or high school math, so I was a little bit fuzzy on that. If only I had looked and played around with the calculator, I would have known that you can, in fact, just type in two linear equations. Let's do 3x plus 5, and I'll do 1. I can actually type in two linear equations, and then it'll show me right here on the graph where their intersection point is. And it'll actually click on it. Aha, 2 and 7. So the intersection point of the linear equations 2x plus 3 and 3x plus 1 is 2, 7. I would have gotten that answer correctly if only I had known how the calculator works. You can type in multiple answers at once and get the and look at multiple answers to, like, if you're working on an equation that has several steps to it. So that's very, very nice. You can delete all these. And now there's other kind of functions here, trigonomic functions, statistics. There's so many things in here. You're not even going to need the majority of them. Like I said, there's ones here for calculus. We have it because that's part of a digital, what am I trying to say? A graphing calculator, but it's not necessary for the math that's on the SAT. And I'll show you exactly what math is necessary on the SAT here in just a second. But just be aware that you have this calculator. It's a fantastic calculator, and it's got more tools than you know what to do with it. It also has tables. It's got all kinds of fun stuff that'll really, really help you when it comes time to take this test, okay? And the other thing that would be so sad if you didn't know how to use it before you came to the test or while you were there, that is the reference chart. So you have many of the formulas for your geometry questions available to you here on a nice little sheet. You can make it smaller, you can delete it, and may have it go whenever you want, okay? So again, let me just quickly flip through these questions so you can see that we've got word problems. We've got questions where you're actually going to type in the answer. And so let me give you an example of exactly what would be right and what would be wrong so you can avoid this problem. So let's say, for example, the answer to this question was 11/3. Sorry, 1 and 1/3. 1 and 1/3. That is not what would come out. It would instead look like 11/3. So you get the question wrong. If you actually, in order to type in 1 and 1/3, you would actually need to type in 1.33. Okay, because then that would be the decimal equivalent of 1 and 1/3. Okay, so that's what I mean by you need to be careful about how you actually enter in the free response questions. Here we have some geometry. Here we have a word problem about buying stuff at a store. Here we just have an equation. Again, we're typing in an answer. So that's what it looks like for the math section, okay? So now we have a good sense of how this all looks, and you can be very comfortable with it so that you are ready when it is time to come take a full-length practice test. So you are going to take one of these 4 SAT practice tests, and you will have the exact amount of time to take the practice test as you will a real test. So you can really set yourself up to do it exactly like you're going to do it on the day of the test. And you will get a score that is exactly the score that you would have gotten on the test if you had taken this exact form. And it's popping up. And now we have the actual amount of questions that you're going to have on a real test, okay? And you're actually going to have the timer for each module, the actual time that you're going to have. This is really nice because during the actual day of the test, you will have your own time. So you'll start around the same time as other students, but you're going to be on your own kind of, I can clear this. I have been so annoyed by this little yellow line the whole time. I don't know where that came from. Okay, I deleted that. You will have time to, on your own, to see exactly where it is that you're on the test. If you need to take a break, you could pause, but you'll always know exactly where you are in the test, how much time you have left. If this stresses you out, like it said, you can just hide it. Okay, go through here, take an entire test. I'm not going to go through it now because we've seen exactly how this all works, but we have more sections. We've got 2 modules for reading and writing, 2 modules for the math. Okay, and the last thing I want to show you is just assistive technology. If you need text to speech or speech to text, if you need to zoom in on your screen, if you need Braille, any of these things for assistive accommodations, all of the instructions for each type of device that you could possibly have will all be here, okay? And you should figure this out and get the computer set up exactly the most comfortable for you based on what you need long before you come to the test, okay? Great. So now, let's say you have taken a practice test on Bluebook. Now you can come over to My SAT. You can sign in using your same College Board account. That's what I'm doing right now. And it'll take you to this dashboard where you can see tests that you've signed up for in the future, where exactly you're taking them, do you have everything you need, and then tests that you've taken in the past. So here is my practice test that I took on the Bluebook app. And the best part about this is I can go in and see exactly how I did on every question. I could see how many I got right, how many I got wrong, and then I can go into the wrong answers, many of which were in math, and review them. So here we go. You're going to have really nice in-depth explanations for every question that you get wrong. And you can see, okay, when I took this test, I actually got a lot of questions with geometry and angles wrong. Ones that involved anything with trigonometry, I got wrong. I do not remember anything from when I was in high school trigonometry. So I need to practice this. If I'm going to do well on the SAT, I need to remember what I actually learned when I was in geometry and trigonometry. So that's the takeaway that I've gotten from reviewing all of my answers here. So now that I've taken a look at this, I can go to the third and final step for practice that I wanted to share with you today, and that is Khan Academy. So let's pull it up right now. Khan Academy is a great website for all types of practice and all types of subjects. Maybe you've used it for your school. You can see here all of the courses that it has, everything from world history to AP physics, et cetera, et cetera. It's all here. It's all extremely exhaustive. These are our official partners. These are the people that we actually work with specifically to deliver practice for the SAT test. This is where you should go before any other place because they have the official practice with College Board. And you can see here, they have a brand new section on their website for the digital SAT. And you can see here, it's broken into two sections. There's the math section, and there is the reading and writing section. And it has it broken down by skill. This is fantastic. These are the subjects in mathematics that we will ask you on the SAT test. If it is not on this list, we're not going to ask you about it. Like I said, there's no calculus on the SAT test. It's not on this list. The most advanced that we get is going to be here in advanced math. But like I said, as I was reviewing my test answers that I got wrong, I was having some problem with geometry and trigonometry. So let's go in here and let's find exactly the topic that I need to review. Excuse me, that is right triangle trigonometry. And I am so lucky because I've got lessons that I can watch that have all kinds of explanations. They've got videos that I can watch.
In this video, we're going to get introduced to the Pythagorean theorem.
Oh, great. It's been 20 years. I do not remember the Pythagorean theorem. Lucky me. Here it all is. It's explained out very nicely. More videos that you can shake a stick with. There's practice as you go along. If you're looking for practice, where am I going to practice for the SAT? Friends, this is where you need to go. It is so in-depth. And then don't just go through this entire course. You don't need to. Take a practice test, see which skills that you've got, which skills that you need practice on, and then come here and really drill down specifically into what it is that you need. This is the same thing for English section. So you can see it's got foundations, medium, and advanced. We do ask specific questions on the reading and writing section. There are specific skills that we are talking about. So they are things like commanded evidence, both textual and quantitative, central ideas, inferences, words in context, text structure and purpose. These are the different themes of questions that we can ask you for the reading and writing questions. So come in here and take a look at these if the English section is the one that you need the most work on, because you'll start to see patterns. You'll start to see, oh, when I go in and I take the reading and writing section on the digital SAT, this is a rhetorical synthesis question. Aha, I know exactly what type of question this is, and I know how it's structured. So I feel much more comfortable and prepared to take this type of question when I come across it because I know exactly how it's set up, okay? So again, go through all of these. You can see exactly all of the types of skills that we're going to ask you for reading and writing. You can actually also take a quiz and find out here as well which ones that you're stuck on, which ones that you already have a really good command of, so that you also can make the best use of your time as you're practicing. Okay, so it really goes into a lot of detail here, and you've got a lot of quizzes, questions, videos, examples, more stuff than you know what to do with. And if you go through this and really focus on the skills that you need to focus on that you've been missing on the digital practice test that you take, I trust that you will do much better when it comes time to actually take the SAT. Okay. I see a couple questions here. Okay, this is a question that comes up a lot, and that is that the test is adaptive, which means the difficulty of each section depends on the performance of the previous one. So students do well in the first section, the second section becomes more challenging, and vice versa. And the person who asked this question wanted to know if that's true. And if it is true, how does the grading work if not all students are doing all the same levels of questions? So I'm glad you asked that. This question comes up a lot. And the answer is that, like I said, you have two modules for the reading and writing section and for the math section. So you'll answer, for example, in the math section here, you'll answer 27 questions. And then based on how you do on those 27 questions, you will get served a different set of questions in the second module. Depending on how many questions you get right in the first module, you'll get a more specific module in the second question. But there is still some overlap. A lot of students will say, oh no, if I get some questions wrong in the first section, does that mean that I'm going to get stuck doing the easier section and that I won't be able to get a good grade? Well, the thing is, if you get a couple questions wrong on the SAT, you can't get a perfect score anyways. You're going to get the score that you're going to get based on how many questions that you've gotten wrong. So we really have worked it out that your fate is not sealed. Your life is not over if you get a few questions wrong on the first module. It just means that in the second module, we're giving you questions that we believe are going to be much better suited for you. So it's kind of like how it was in the past, that there's kind of a certain amount of questions that if you get them wrong, there's only so high that you can possibly get on the test anyways. But there is still a lot of overlap. So if you do poorly on the first module, there still is a lot of opportunities in the second module to still get a good score. You're not like totally shut off from getting one. It's all very complicated. It's all very well designed so that you're simultaneously given many opportunities, but also that you're given types of questions that are much more appropriate for where we think that you're going to do in the second section. I hope, Fadi, that helps answer your question. Sometimes I'm not able to be extremely precise about how each one of these questions are weighted or exactly all of the dynamics behind this, because to be honest, it's a little bit secret about how it is that we do that. But you can rest assured that we have spent countless hours figuring out exactly how to do this so that we're simultaneously being fair to students, but also making sure to deliver them a test that's much shorter because it has many more questions that are specifically for at the level that the student where they're taking it. Okay, so that was my run through. That was a quick look at exactly the Bluebook app that we have, what it looks like to take a test, all of the tools that you have, and most importantly, where you can come and practice once you've figured out what this all looks like. So I implore you, I think that that's a good SAT word. I implore you to practice some of these tests. You've got 4 of them here. We will be adding more tests in the future. Take these actual full-length practice tests. Figure out what it is. Maybe take the first 2. Figure out which skills are really you need help with, and then go over to Khan Academy and drill down with them and really get some practice. If you do, let's say, 20 hours of practice, do it, nights and weekends, then you'll really be much better prepared for a test than it was if you were just going into it blind and you would never downloaded the app before and you never looked at it. If you're not going to practice, please, at the very least, download Bluebook before the day of the test so you can make sure that you're able to open it on your computer and that you know that it's compatible with the Bluebook app, okay? We don't want you to have to be worrying about any computer issues when you walk in on that day of the test. We want you to only be focusing on things like the Pythagorean theorem and words and context and the actual test itself, okay? Great. And I will spend the rest of this time just answering a couple questions that we have. If you have any lingering questions, please just put them in the chat and I'll try to go through them, okay? So first question is when we're going to be adding more practice tests. I'm not exactly sure, Elwilid. Hopefully in the next few months, but we do have these first 4 ones here. And then there's a lot of stuff on Khan Academy that you can do. So like I said, my advice is to probably take 2 of them to get a good sense of where you're at and then save those last 2 once you've actually been able to do the practice. And you can, again, hopefully go back to the first 2 later if you've kind of forgotten them, and you can kind of reuse them if you need to. But we should have more tests coming out soon. And you also asked how many hours you should study. There is such thing as studying too much. So what I definitely recommend is to take these first 2 tests. Don't spend all your summer if you're going to take this test in June, but spend a few good hours. Sometimes, I don't know why I'm thinking about this, but sometimes I hear people say 20 hours is a good amount to study. There's actually been some research about like how many points you can expect to raise your grade if you study 20 hours. But 20 hours is definitely enough time for you to spend some good quality time on Khan Academy, really focusing on the skills that you need, that maybe some of the stuff that you are a little rusty on. Great. Oh, sorry, I'm going to get the next question here. Yes, so this is a question about getting test results. So one of the great part about the test is that you no longer have to wait months to get your test results back. You should be able to get them in just a couple of weeks. So yes, students who took the test in March, they had to wait about 2 weeks for their result. This is the very first time that we were doing this for real. So we wanted to make sure that all of the test results were accurate and that they were fair. And then we released the test results. You can expect moving forward that you will get the results in shorter time than that. So I believe we're trying to get it down to just over a week to get your test results back, which again is another reason that this test will be less stressful. You'll get your results much more quickly. You'll be able to send them off to colleges much more quickly, and it should be a much more enjoyable experience. But yes, it was about 2 weeks, you're right, and it should be a little bit shorter. I believe down to like 11 days when we really get it going, okay? Faiza, you had said that you're not able to find the Bluebook app in your Android phone. That is correct. You cannot take the digital SAT test on a phone. It has to be a tablet or a laptop. You will not be able to download it on an iPhone or an Android phone. Okay. And when I say 20, going back to what I was saying earlier, when I say 20 hours, I mean 20 hours in total. Please do not spend 20 hours a week studying for the SAT. That's probably too much. 20 hours in total before you take the test will make a really, really big difference in your score and a really big difference in your level of preparedness, okay? Great. A question about can teachers see students' results for the practice tests? I don't believe so. A student could share their answers with the teacher, but I don't believe there's an automatic way for teachers to be able to go in and take a look. That's a good question. I haven't had that question before. You should bring your own device to the test center. Yes, that is true. You need to bring your own laptop or tablet. You can borrow one from a family member or a friend if you need to. It doesn't have to actually be your own device. And if you are unable to borrow from anyone, from a relative, from your school, if there is no way for you to have any type of laptop, or tablet, we will work with you to send one to the test center that you can borrow from College Board, okay? This process takes a while because we have to validate who you are, validate that you actually do have a need for a device. But yes, if it is impossible for you to borrow a device from anybody, you can borrow a device from College Board, okay? Do all questions on the test have the same weight? No. Some of them will have different weights. It's very complicated. I'm not going to get into it exactly how these is all weighted, but it is weighted based on many different factors, and it's one of the ways that we're able to determine which questions you see in the second section. Okay. And I believe that's all the questions that we have for now. I'm just going to take one last look. I think that's it.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Matthew. We really appreciate it. It was a very informative session. I don't know if there is any questions that we haven't answered. For those who are asking about our Facebook page, I already included the link in the chat box. Thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you very much, Matthew. I know it's super early, so we are so sorry for the inconvenience, but it was a very informative. I hope that
Not at all.
Thank you very much. Our students and our counselors now have a better idea about the SAT digital form of the test. Thank you very much, Matthew.
Thank you,
Have
guys.
a good
Best of
day.
luck to you, and thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.